Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today, Everything You Need to Know About Getting an ESL or TEFL Job Abroad. We'll get started in just a minute or two. I'm just waiting for a couple more attendees. Before we get started, I'd like to conduct a simple sound check just to make sure you can hear everything fine. If you can hear me, just type yes in the question box, and we'll get started in a minute. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our webinar today, Everything You Need to Know About Getting an ESL or TEFL Job Abroad. I'd like to welcome you to our presentation today, and we'll cover some topics which you'll see on your screen to follow. But first, my name is Christy, and I'm the Teachaway Community Manager here at Teachaway. I have also had the pleasure of teaching abroad as well, and I'm really excited to be here today to help you do the exact same. I'm joined by my co-host, David, as well.
Hey everyone, I'm Dave Stewart, and I'm a teacher placement coordinator here at Teachaway, based in Vancouver, Canada. But before that, I was an international teacher, just like some of you guys, and I worked with Teachaway to get a job over in China in 2015 and was placed with EF in Guangzhou.
Let's get started. So some topics we'll cover today. We'll cover briefly the process for applying for jobs with Teachaway. Jumping off from our previous webinar, we'll also address China's ESL boom. And the main content of our webinar today will be debunking myths of teaching English in China. So myself and David will run you through some of the most common myths and maybe some of your common concerns. We'll outline the Explore program and exciting opportunities available to you to teach English in China through Teachaway and how to apply. And at the end of the presentation, David and I will host a live question and answer period. During the course of the presentation, or if you've brought questions with you now, we do encourage you to submit any and all questions in the question box now or during the course of the presentation. And we will either answer them at the end in the live question and answer period, or we also have a Teachaway representative on the line who may, during the course of your presentation, also be able to offer you the answer to your question. So maybe, David, you want to run us through the steps of applying for jobs through Teachaway?
Sure. So I'm a teacher placement coordinator here in Vancouver, but before that, as I said, I was a candidate just like some of you guys looking for a job. So the first thing you can do definitely is register for Teachaway on our website, teachaway.com. It only takes about 10 minutes if you haven't already. And then the second thing you really want to do is make sure that you have a complete profile on our website. Things like a professional photo, your resume. Also, if you can upload some of your other additional documents, things like scanning your passport, having your degree scanned, those kind of things will really complete your profile, making sure that the placement coordinators have as much information to work with as possible. And it'll really just speed up the application process for you and make things a real snap. So after that, you can apply for jobs, and if you qualify, you'll be contacted by a teacher placement coordinator like myself. And the next steps include things like pre-screens, interviews, video questionnaires, and interviews with the school abroad.
Great. So if anyone's considering teaching in China today, we've got some really great myths to debunk. So let's start with our first one. So myth number one is teaching English in China is sketchy. So, this association may have come from the past or perhaps from illegitimate schools, but ESL teaching in China has experienced a major overhaul. And the government, as well as multinational companies, are really focused on providing high quality education. So, David, could you speak to this maybe a little bit more? Did you, before applying or during the course of applying to different jobs to teach in China, find the process at all sketchy or the idea of teaching English in China sketchy?
Yeah, I think with regard to this issue, it's just a matter of being careful about who you're working with, and that goes for just about anything in life. So it's really important that you're working with legitimate schools. So here at Teachaway, we've partnered with a preferred network of schools over in China. We make sure that all the schools we work with are professional, that everything is handled properly. So that's the biggest thing, is just making sure that you have partners you're working with that you trust, that you know are reputable. All the schools we're working with over in China are, they're legitimate schools, and some of the schools are really quite large, and they're operating in multiple countries. So we really have the best interests of you at hand. We want to make sure you have a positive experience. You go home to your home country and you tell all your friends and family about how fantastic the experience of teaching in China was.
And of course, as you've mentioned, David, Teachaway does have a laser sharp focus on making sure that we offer candidates only the most reputable positions with the most reputable schools abroad. So, myth number two, all Chinese cities look like this. So, to the right of your screen, you're going to see a large major highway here, and it seems that there's a lot of fog or smog in the air. While some Chinese cities do experience smog at times, it's not representative of the entire country. So you could understand how unfair it might be to judge the US or Canada based on one single photo. It's not going to be reflective of all areas in that country, nor all times in that single city. David, did you experience any high levels of pollution or a climate like this while you were teaching in China or traveling to different regions in the country?
I was based in southern China in Guangzhou, so on some days it was a little bit smoggy. It might be similar to something like I guess LA. And if you do travel to certain regions, it's also seasonal. So if you're up in Beijing or Tianjin in the winter, the pollution can get worse. There's also different websites you can check out to figure out what the air situation is day to day. But as you travel inland, there's a lot of fantastic places that have really, really clean air. So for myself personally, I traveled to Hunan province to see where they filmed Avatar. And as I was walking through this amazing place called Golden Whip Stream, they actually have an area of this national park that's called an oxygen bar. And when I was breathing in the air in Hunan province, it was just every bit as clean as air here in British Columbia, Canada.
Amazing. And that just sounds like such an incredible experience, too, highlighted by a beautiful setting and environment. Now, it's important to note as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Explorer program in detail, but if you have preferences for where you'd like to be placed through the Explorer program to teach in China, Teachaway placement coordinators like David can make a note on your application as well if you're tied to a certain area. So, myth number three is China has a low demand for ESL. While this myth may have been true a few years ago, we know now that the demand in China to learn English is at an all-time high. So, just a couple facts to back that. There are currently over 300 million English language students in China. And there's an estimated shortfall of English teachers amounting to around 100,000. And all of that being said, there's a rising interest in learning English across China. So, David, how did you experience this ESL boom when you were abroad? Did you find that there were a lot of other English teachers going over and teaching in China to meet this demand?
Yes, absolutely. When I was working for EF in China, we had a huge community just within that one school itself, EF. We had lots of different schools all around the city. We'd interact with each other, go to different events, and also, yeah, just living in any major city in China, you're going to encounter a lot of expats. And one of the fantastic things about China is the expat community is really quite vibrant and different. There's a lot of people that are there for a multitude of reasons from different ethnicities, backgrounds, countries. So, it's a really exciting industry because it's growing. And I think anyone can attest to the fact that when you're in a business that's growing and booming, it's just a fun time. It's a great place to be around. And that was definitely, what I experienced when I was in China.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that this is great news for anyone looking at teaching in China. It means there's a vast number of schools throughout different locations and provinces in China looking for teachers. So, in many cases, it means a lot of choice for anyone thinking about teaching in China. Myth number four, Chinese food is no good. Now, authentic Chinese food in China is far different from the food that we eat here as Westerners in Canada and the US. It's really important to remember that Chinese food is much more diverse than the small sampling of food that we have that is Chinese in North America. David, can you speak to your experience with food in China and maybe share if you had eaten a lot of Chinese food in Canada before going over?
Yeah, I was a bit concerned about what I was going to eat when I went over to China because growing up in Canada, I never really did like Chinese food. I always found it was a bit too greasy. It just didn't really cater to me. But boy, I tell you what, when you go to China, the Chinese food in China is completely different than what we have here in the West. It's really going to vary region to region. So, I was living in Guangzhou. So if you're in Guangdong province, you're going to have Cantonese style food, a lot of delicious dim sum, some pork buns, things like that. If you go up to regions like Hunan or Sichuan province, the food's a lot spicier. It's got those amazing spices because up in Sichuan, that's where they're actually growing the peppers themselves. Then if you travel up north, you're going to get a different style of food that's more reminiscent of something like Malaysian cuisine. So the food really varies region to region. It's fresh, it's fantastic. Oftentimes it can be cheap, but then you also do have the option of having some Western foods in the larger cities. It might just cost you a little bit more money. So in terms of food, I think that's actually one of my favorite memories of China is just how fantastic the food was.
That's great. And I mean, just like you've said, if you want to eat more Western style food or you're feeling a little bit of homesickness and you want that sort of taste of home, or maybe you just can't live without peanut butter, you're going to be able to find this stuff in China, just going to cost you a little bit more. So, a tip we have here on screen and something to remember is if you actually eat locally and you eat the local Chinese food, it's not only a great way to experience the culture on another level, you could actually save money too. So, our second last myth for today is myth five. I need to speak Chinese to teach in China. Now, it's really important to note that being able to speak Mandarin or Cantonese is not a requirement to teach English in China. And second to that, you'll find that some employers actually see the lack of knowledge of a Chinese language as an advantage, because what this means is a more immersive experience for their students. So the students will be forced to communicate with you in English and won't be able to communicate with you in their L1 or first language. So, David, I'm really curious. Did you speak any Mandarin or Cantonese before going to China?
No, I did not speak any Mandarin or Cantonese, and to be perfectly honest with everybody in this webinar, I don't really speak any Mandarin or Cantonese to this moment. But it's really actually, it is definitely to your benefit not to know it in the classroom because that's gonna, yeah, make the students really challenge them to use the new language and also not just keep reverting back to their mother tongue. So that's really beneficial for the students' learning. But I also just want to address any concerns people might have. If you do have a classroom full of young learners, most of our schools do often have some sort of a co-teacher, facilitator role that can deal with younger students that are having language issues. But generally speaking, you don't need to know any Chinese yourself to teach in China. You're going to be a successful English teacher without it. And yeah, it's definitely beneficial in your day-to-day life on the street. But in the classroom, no way. You're speaking English the whole time. Everyone's speaking English at your school, and we're all having a good time doing it.
Absolutely. Not speaking the local language isn't a reason to shy away from the opportunity of teaching in a new and exciting country. Our final myth for today for teaching in China is myth six: censorship blocks access to all information. Now, it is true that some websites and some content are blocked on Chinese servers. Censorship is extreme in the country. And just to give you an idea of how extreme, in 2013, China had an internet police force of around 200 million. So information is guarded online in China. But there are ways around this. And I'd like David for you to speak to the next 2 points. What is a VPN and why is it important?
All right. Yeah. Also, just to clarify something, I think it was 2 million, not 200 million. That would be quite a large police force for the internet. But with regard to a VPN, that's a virtual private network. So basically, what that does is it changes the IP address of your computer. Your IP address is a set of numbers that the internet uses to identify where your internet signal is coming from. But with a VPN, you can actually change your IP address to anywhere around the world. This is really beneficial for accessing regionally locked content. So maybe you're an expat from Britain and you want to know what's going on with the BBC, you can use a VPN to access that. It's also, you can use it to get around the Chinese firewall, so you can access websites like Google, Facebook, YouTube, things like that. Also, schools often use it as a means of encrypting their internet traffic to keep things a little bit more secure. So your school might have its own a VPN for your access. But also within China, if you do travel to places like Hong Kong, there is no censorship in terms of things like Google or YouTube or Facebook. And also, if I'm not mistaken, if you go to the central business district of Shanghai, you might also see that the censorship has been lifted in that region. But overall, getting a VPN, it's completely legal, it's fine, and we highly recommend it before you take off for China.
Great. So there's always a way around it to get the access to the information you're looking for. In some cases, your school may even have its very own VPN for your access. But of course, we do recommend you download one yourself on your computer and/or your smartphone as well. So, those are all of the myths we have to debunk for you today. I hope that perhaps we have shed some light on some maybe major concerns or small areas of concerns you've had about teaching English in China. And maybe you've even learned some new information, some new tips that you didn't know before. So, um, next up, we'd like to talk a little bit about the Explore program. We've referenced it a couple times throughout our presentation and in our last webinar. But Teachaway has a new Explore program. It has a wide range of teaching positions available to teachers of all experience levels. And you can actually go online now on the Teachaway website and take a look at the different opportunities available to you. But let's talk a little bit more about it while we have you here. So the Explore program, as I said, we have a number of different partner schools. Therefore, they have positions available in many locations across China. Some of the cities are listed here in the first column. And what you're going to notice is you probably are familiar with some of these, but for the most part, some of these cities might be new to you. And the Explore program actually offers teachers a really great opportunity to teach in China in perhaps a city they've never heard of and have a really great immersive cultural experience. So, David, are any of the cities in the left column on our screens here popping out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I see my old haunt Guangzhou's down there, so that's a fantastic place if you love Cantonese food. Also, I'm taking a look here. We have Chengdu, that's the capital of Sichuan province, and it's quite famous internationally for their world famous panda breeding center. They're repopulating the forests of China with the great panda, one of their great national treasures. Also, you have a city like Suzhou, that's also known to some as the Venice of the East. Fantastic looking city. And then Shanghai, one of the world's largest cities, very cosmopolitan. And if you take a look on, they also have a secret bar culture in Shanghai where you can slip in a trapdoor or a secret bookshelf and go and have a cocktail after your day of working.
Amazing. So it sounds like there's some really exciting opportunities for teachers here in China. And I have to be honest, I didn't know actually of some of those interesting aspects of some of those cities. So lots to discover here for sure. So you can see some of the logos of our partner schools in the center of your screen. We can see EF, English First, where David has self-taught. And then let's just dive in to a summary of the perks of some of these teaching positions. So, as a teacher placed through one of the school partners in the Explore program here at Teachaway, you will be offered work visa sponsorship. This is great news. You don't need to figure out your visa yourself. A teacher placement coordinator like David will be there to help you along the way, as you will also have the support of your school as well. A flight will be provided to you on your way to China and a bonus for your return home. You will also be provided, in most cases, a settling in allowance. This will help make the transition to your new teaching environment and your new city the most comfortable. These positions also include great medical insurance coverage, the details of which you can discuss with a placement coordinator if you're a successful candidate. You'll receive all Chinese public holidays off. You'll also receive some great training. So, when you arrive, you'll receive a little bit of professional training before starting up your position. And you'll also be offered ongoing training opportunities, and TEFL certification expenses will be covered. So, a TEFL certification is required to teach in China, and that's something that Teachaway here can help you out with, and the expense of which is covered. So, a lot of exciting things to consider when applying to the Explore program. And you can apply on the Teachaway website now. Our partner schools in China are actively looking for teachers to meet that ESL boom that we've talked about. So, you can visit teachaway.com/explore-program. And I'll just leave this on your screens for just a moment. So you can review the information and a couple things in further detail in terms of our partner schools and the positions and benefits of those jobs that are available online. So teachaway.com/explore-program. So we're reaching the end of our presentation and we're on our live question and answer period. So I see we've had some questions submitted via the question box during the presentation. That's great. If you have any questions that have popped into your mind that you'd like to ask David or myself, please submit them in the question box on your screen and we'll hop on the line and answer any questions that you have. So we have a great question from Jane. Jane says, "I already have a TEFL certification. Do I need to obtain the TEFL certification provided through the Explore program?" So Jane, if you already have a TEFL certification and it is of 120 hours, and if upon speaking with a placement coordinator such as David later in the recruitment process, it could be that your existing TEFL certification does qualify you for teaching through the Explore program with our school partners in China. I will also encourage everyone listening in today to just verify the requirements of the program via the job posting online, making sure you're meeting all other educational requirements. One of which is to have a bachelor's degree, so making sure that you have that as well. We also have a great question from Rachel for David. How many children did you have in your classroom? So how many students did you have?
All right, that's a good question. Generally speaking, I think my classes would fluctuate. So, in my experiences when I was in China, I taught adults. So over there, I would work in at EF adult schools. We had a smaller face-to-face class with 4 students, and we'd sit together. And then we also would have workshops with up to 25 students. Now, if you're teaching young learners, I would say generally speaking, classrooms are usually going to be about maybe 10 to 12 students, maybe a few more. But parents are paying quite a bit of money for these programs. So don't you're not going to run into a classroom with 50 kids. That's not going to happen at a private language learning school. You're probably going to have, I would say, somewhere between about 8 to 12 students in a classroom.
Great, and maybe just to offer some more information to everyone listening, what was your biggest challenge in adapting to your new classroom in China?
I think the biggest challenge is just to maybe get over your initial nerves as a teacher. Your first couple of lessons, you might be a little bit nervous, but you do teach every day, so you really do get into a groove. And it's also a great way just to improve your presentation skills, your interpersonal speaking skills, things like that. So yeah, just getting over those initial nerves. But once you get into a groove as a teacher, it's like any other job. It's like riding a bike. Once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to do it naturally, and you'll also enjoy it. The time really does fly when you're a teacher in the classroom, and it's an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, and in the case of the Explorer program, it's also important to remember the ongoing training that's available. As David referenced in some of these positions, especially with the younger learners, you may have a co-teacher as well to help you sort of navigate your new classroom and sort of put some of those classroom management strategies that you've learned in a TEFL certification course or you've learned in your ongoing training into action. So we have some other really great questions here. One has to do with bringing your family over to teach abroad. So how many people take their families with them to teach abroad, and how is that handled? And perhaps David, you can shed some more light on this, but it will depend highly on the program. So it will depend if the program offers sponsorship for a family to go abroad. David, are you familiar how this works in China or perhaps with some of the partners in the Explore program in particular?
Yeah, so unfortunately, as it stands right now with the Explorer program, we're only able to sponsor the teacher alone. That has to do with just the visa regulations of getting a Z visa in China. Once you do arrive in China, you'll have to complete just a basic health check to make sure that everything's okay, and then you'll be issued a residency permit by the government. And unfortunately, we're unable to secure those for anyone aside from the teacher themselves. We do have a few candidates who are coming in who might have a spouse who's made arrangements to live in China already and they have their own visa. So those kind of situations are manageable, but generally speaking, we're only able to sponsor the teacher alone for these positions.
Great, perfect. And it is important to keep in mind as well that Teachaway has a myriad of English teaching positions available to both certified licensed teachers and uncertified or teachers with very little teaching experience available. So it could be that other programs on our website do offer sponsorship for your family. So do keep searching. There are so many different jobs and positions available to teach abroad. Kind of going back to the topic of teaching in China specifically, Rachel has another really great question here. What is the number one place you would recommend visiting in China? So maybe David, you can answer this.
Oh boy, that's definitely the toughest question of the day. There's a lot of things to see. Okay, if I had to make a list, definitely see the Great Wall. The Great Wall of China is life-changing. It's fantastic. It's amazing. What else is a fantastic thing to see? Zhangjiajie National Park. So if you look up where Avatar was filmed, that's a fantastic national park. The Terracotta Warriors, that's in Xi'an. That's another fantastic thing to see. Xi'an's also a great city. You can go do a bike ride around the wall. It was also listed on Lonely Planet's list of greatest places to visit in Asia this year, so you can check that out for Xi'an. Mount Huashan's also really close to Xi'an, and some of you might be familiar with this mountain. You might have seen it on the internet. It's famous for its skywalk, where you get strapped into a sort of a harness and you're able to kind of dangle out 1,000 feet above for those thrill seekers in the audience. So yeah, those are probably top my list. And oh, I can't forget this one. Another place is called Yangshuo. It's a small little town just I think north of Guilin in Guangxi province, and that place is probably my closest experience to heaven on earth because it was just so beautiful, so quiet, and really a fantastic place to travel to.
Well, you know what, David, you're actually getting me really excited to potentially teach abroad in China with all these exciting places to visit that are now on my list of places I need to go see. I'd just like to make a last call for any other questions that we have. We have had a lot of questions also answered just by chat, so I hope that everyone's found the answers to their questions quite helpful. I'll just allow another minute or two for any last minute questions. Oh, we do have another one from a couple visitors here too. A really great question. What kind of content should I have on my CV? So it's important to remember that all of the information collected as part of your application via Teachaway is collected online through your teacher profile. So to answer your question, Teachaway has made that very easy. So once you go online to teachaway.com and register as a teacher to set up a free account, it will prompt you for all of the information that is required. Your teacher profile will have to be a certain percentage complete before you can actually begin applying for teaching jobs. So if you just want to log on, and this was Simbiso's question, if you just want to log on to your teacher profile, it will take you through all the steps and it will prompt you for all the necessary content for your resume. One other really great question just before we wrap up from Mariah is the Explorer program only accepting native speakers? How about non-native English speakers? Can they still apply? Since most opportunities I saw in China, they prefer native English speakers. So maybe, David, I'll let you take this question.
Yeah, so as a general rule of thumb, yes, our partners over in China are looking for native speakers now. So basically, that means that either English is your first language, or we do have situations where some of our candidates, maybe you were born in China and then you moved to Canada or United States or Britain when you were maybe quite young and you grew up in the school system there. So that would definitely qualify you. But yeah, generally speaking, we do want native speakers for these positions. That is part of the job description for these jobs.
Great. And when in doubt, just review the requirements of a job posting on the Teachaway website and cross-reference what is required with your education and experience. And if it matches, then we really encourage you to apply, and a placement coordinator like David will have all of the information he needs to assess whether or not you'd be a good fit for the role. So I do hope that everyone had an enjoyable time joining us for our webinar today, and maybe you discovered something new about China that you didn't know before. So just a quick reminder to join us for the next ESL webinar. So that will be happening on July the 26th. You can register via the same page as you did for this webinar. That is, again, go.teachaway.com// ESL jobs. So please register for our next session. It's our last one. It's just a series of 3. If you have any questions after today and you'd like to contact us, you can email us as well at info@teachaway.com. And we welcome all of your questions, whether it be about teaching abroad in general, teaching abroad in China through the Explore program with one of Teachaway's school partners. Everyone here at Teachaway, most of us have taught abroad. We understand the great benefits of this incredible experience, and we're very happy to answer any of your questions. So we hope you've found all the answers to the questions you have today. We look forward to receiving any future questions, and have a great day.